I normally cover 2D fighting games on this channel, and it's like every other video I make is about Street Fighter, so for today's video, I wanted to cover something completely out of the ordinary. Some of my favourite fighting games are Ultimate Marvel vs Capcom 3 and Tatsunoko vs Capcom, and they're both developed by this little company in Japan called Aiding. However, one thing I wasn't a fan of was tokusatsu media, most notably Kamen Rider. It's not because I dislike the wacky plots, outrageous costumes, and world-class CGI, but it's just that I know next to nothing about the Kamen Rider license, so I feel like it'd be disingenuous to call myself a fan, if that makes sense. But I do know one mega fan of the genre, and he introduced me to a Kamen Rider fighting game on the Wii. After learning it was developed by Aiding, I was down to try it out. I mean, I'm a big fan of fighting games, so I'm always open to trying out something new to see if I like it. But believe me, I absolutely could not have expected the sheer insanity that this game has to offer. Released exclusively in Japan, 2012's Kamen Rider Super Climax Heroes is arguably the most broken fighting game I have ever played, and I've made a video on Hokuto no Ken. I'll be covering Super Climax Heroes in detail to demonstrate why it's downright disgusting with its character balancing and combos. But before we get into that, allow me to introduce my aforementioned Kamen Rider friend, old mate Barry. He'll be giving you a brief rundown of what exactly Kamen Rider is, and then I'll, unfortunately, return to cover the game in more detail. Take it away, Barry.
Are you ready? Hissing!
Kamen Rider was originally created by Shotaro Ishinomori. Shotaro was also known for creating several immensely popular long-running series, such as Cyborg 009, Kekaida, Gilgamesh, and of course, Kamen Rider. Did you also know that Shotaro was also responsible for the creation of Super Sentai, which much later on in its lifespan was adapted into a little-known show you might have heard of before, Power Rangers. It was sort of a big deal in the 90s. Kamen Rider is one of the most prominent tokusatsu works of our time. Tokusatsu, which roughly translates to special photography, is a style of live-action film or television that makes heavy use of practical special effects. Think back to the older Godzilla films that had people in suits, or even Power Rangers for you 90s kids out there. Kamen Rider first aired back in 1971 following the adventures of Hongo Takeshi, known as Kamen Rider Ichigo, and Hayato Ichimonji, known as Kamen Rider Nigo, and is still running to this day, with the current airing series being Kamen Rider Gotchard, which follows Hitaro Ichinose, better known as Kamen Rider Gotchard. Every Kamen Rider series, with mild exceptions, are all standalone entities. You can jump into any you choose and have a great time. The Kamen Rider series are broken up into 4 phases based on the imperial eras of Japan. The first is the Showa era, which lasted from 1971 to 1994. Starting with the original Kamen Rider series and ending with the feature film Kamen Rider J. The Heisei phase is broken up into 2 halves. The first half of the Heisei phase lasted from 2000 through to 2009, kicking things off strong with the fan favorite series Kamen Rider Kuga, and closing off with the series to feature my personal favorite lead, Kamen Rider Decade. The second half of the Heisei phase spanned from 2009 to 2019. Starting with another fan favorite, Kamen Rider W, and ending with the very divisive Kamen Rider Gio. The current era, known as the Reiwa era, spans from 2019 to present day, which began with my personal favorite series to date, Kamen Rider 01, and is continuing to this day with the current series, Kamen Rider Gotchard. Kamen Rider has blessed the lives of so many over the years and will continue to do so for many years to come. Whether you're counting your sins, ready to clear this with no continues, or simply passing through, one thing will always be certain: Riders will be there for you. I'll pass you back over to my boy Khan. Gotcha and go!
Henshin!
Complete.
Much like the property it's based off, Super Climax Heroes has a crapload of characters to gaze upon. From the low tiers, who would still dominate most other fighting game characters, to top tiers that have to be banned because they're so broken, it's almost a guarantee that you'll find a character in the game that you'll like. Kamen Rider as a series has a large variety of different incarnations, and after doing some research, I found that there are countless seasons of the show. I wonder who has the time to sit down and watch them all. As Super Climax Heroes released in 2012, its character roster stops at the beginning of Kamen Rider Wizard, which began in September of that year. But fret not, because if you're a fan of the 3 trillion forms of the series that debuted before 2012, you'll recognize some familiar faces. My main is Agito, and I found out that he represents Kamen Rider Agito, which aired from January 2001 to January 2002, whereas Barry likes Kabuto, which aired from January 2006 to 2007. I was honestly blown away by how many characters there are in this game and how different they all are to play. If I were to break down every single character and what makes them all unique, this video would be longer than Oppenheimer, but what I can say is that each character has at least a couple forms for you to choose from that change some of their specials. Agito, for instance, can use what I like to call the Bugatti. This is useful in combos as it can sometimes hit OTG, and it does enormous amounts of damage unscaled, and it's also good to use against enemies who like to rush you down and disrespect your personal space. Another favourite of mine is Lunar Trigger from Kamen Rider W, and they called it this because if you pick this character, the only thing you will get is the W. Seriously, he is completely broken. All you have to do is spam his jumping gun move over and over, and it's pretty much impossible for even the most seasoned of players to dodge. I know someone in the comments is gonna say, "Duh, I can dodge this, it's so easy bro, just get good at the game." No, you can't. Anyway, you may have noticed by looking at the character select screen that there are a lot of characters in this game. But how many are there exactly? Well, I spent 45 years counting, and there is a whopping 45 characters to choose from, and that's before you count form changes and other game-altering mechanics. Now, one of the fun parts about this game, and this also applies to Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 with that game's 50-character roster, is that due to the sheer amount of playable characters, the balancing is almost non-existent. Seriously, I have played a lot of fighting games in my day, but Super Climax Heroes never fails to make me scream with excitement upon seeing some ridiculous combo that I've never seen before. From characters who like to fight you from a distance, up close, or somewhere in between, Super Climax Heroes really has it all, and even after hours and hours I spent labbing the game and playing with Barry, I think I've only barely scratched the surface. Watch this, did it hit? No! Ah!
Get fucked.
変身
Now that we know a little bit about Kamen Rider in general, and the character roster of Super Climax Heroes specifically, let's discuss how you actually play the game. I can't discuss every single mechanic because it would take way too long, but I'll try and cover the most important stuff. I use a classic controller extension in Dolphin with a PS4 controller, so the controls I mention are referring to that. You move your character around with a D-pad in an 8-way movement system, meaning you can freely move in any direction you like, and it's sort of like Soul Calibur. You have a light attack and a heavy attack, and these can be chained together to perform combos. The combos in this game aren't very long, but they can do massive damage, so it's all about getting a small initial hit, and then going into quick and big damage from there. You also have what I call the dive kick button, which usually acts as a forward moving strike that can be performed either on the ground or in the air. Right trigger is your jump button, and this can not only be used to avoid grounded enemies' attacks, but also to come crashing down with an attack of your own. You can also jump cancel some attacks to perform air combos, but this requires a bit of meter. L1 is a quick, metered dash that you can use to cover distance, but pressing the button again will perform a little cinematic attack on hit that does decent damage. You can even combo into this for some pretty sweet looking combos. Pressing R1 during any of your hits will perform a cancel that allows you to continue your combo, and this is essentially a Roman cancel from Guilty Gear. But with so many metered options, how do you get meter? Like other fighting games, you can gain meter by inflicting or receiving damage, but you can also hold down the select button to manually recharge your meter. You can't move while you're doing this, but it can turn the tide of a battle when it's down to the wire. If you have at least 2 bars of meter, you can flick the right stick in any direction to perform your rider art, a character-specific technique. Agito's rider art is the Bugatti, which I showed off before, and I love it for how silly it looks. But we haven't even gotten into the best part yet. If you press square with at least 3 bars of meter, you can do this. That's right, supers, or rider finales as they're known in the game, are performed with 1 button, can easily be comboed into, and they go on forever. Seriously, there are supers in this game that go on for over 50 seconds. You may have also noticed this climax bar thing at the top of the screen that fills up during attacks. If this fills up all the way, both players enter a state called climax time where their meters are completely refilled. If you're about to do a combo that won't kill because you don't have enough meter, you can plan ahead and make sure that climax time activates towards the end of the combo to refill your bar. You may have also noticed the blue bars here. This is your guard meter, and it depletes when you block attacks. If you're being hit, press both triggers on the controller at the same time to burst out of the combo. However, doing a burst heavily drains the guard bar, so you can't be overly reliant on it. When the bar is fully depleted, you can't block anymore. That's right, the game removes your ability to block, so your only defensive option is to try and run away. Super Climax Heroes obviously isn't the deepest fighting game in the world, but it's not trying to be. Instead, the game goes out of its way to ensure that Kamen Rider fans first and foremost will be satisfied with the heavy amount of fan service, and fans of kusoge fighting games like myself can sink their teeth into something completely broken. As mentioned before, there are literally millions of characters to choose from in the game, and while they all follow the same basic control layout, their special moves and combos all greatly differ. As for balancing, this is what the tier list looks like. Good luck understanding it all, because I sure don't. The 4 characters at the top, W Lunar Trigger, Forza Magnet States, Wizard Hurricane Form, and Skull, are completely banned and for pretty good reason. Look how dominating this is. How in the world are you ever supposed to beat this character when he can just jump away and fire multiple homing projectiles at you? Or how about Skull, with his homing bullet that comes out almost instantly and leads to this cutscene on hit? Man, this game is busted, but it's still pretty fun.
Legend!
Prior to playing Super Climax Heroes, the closest I ever got to colourful masked Japanese heroes was watching Power Rangers SPD as a kid and playing Tatsunoko vs Capcom, so it felt good to play an officially licensed Kamen Rider fighter. If you like slower, more methodical, thoughtful fighting games, then maybe this won't be for you, but if you're like me and can appreciate sheer kusoge, definitely try it out. Super Climax Heroes is ridiculously easy to play it in Dolphin Emulator at 1080p or even 4K, and it works fantastically well with a PS4 controller, which is what I use to play the game. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for sticking around, I hope you had fun and learned something about the game, and I'll see you in the next one.